through Fusion GPS to get the FBI and DOJ involved that led to this entire investigation. So for 2 years, we've had a lot of accusations, and I think it's going to be hard for his credibility to be established once again if he doesn't take some type of an action like stepping down, and he should have to answer to that.
I've only got a few seconds left here, Congressman. So does it behoove Republicans then to go on the offense and, as Lindsey Graham laid out, open investigation, call in a special counsel to look at how this began?
Oh, I think we owe that to the American people. To me, this is the largest scandal that I can think of in American history from within our own government and the American people. If they're ever going to trust the government again, we have to go into this and reveal everything that took place.
Congressman, appreciate your time. Sorry to cut you short there on the breaking news. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jesse Smollett's in court. You're going to hear from him in a moment here. That's what we've been told anyway.
Let's back this up real quick before we get on this other case. Let's listen to this remark real quick.
For his credibility to be established once again if he doesn't take some type of an action like stepping down, and he should have to answer to that.
I've only got a few seconds left here, Congressman. So does it behoove Republicans then to go on the offense and, as Lindsey Graham laid out, open investigation, call in a special counsel to look at how this began?
Oh, I think we owe that to the American people. To me, this is the largest scandal that I can think of in American history from within our own government and the American people. If they're ever going to trust the government again, we have to go into this and reveal everything that took place.
Congressman, appreciate your time. Sorry to cut you short there on the breaking news. Thank you.
All right, I want to stop real quick and say this, that it's obvious that we are living in different times in comparison to 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Most of the time, stuff like this pertaining to public opinion was confined and in behind the doors of secrecy. Today, because of the internet world, because of the social media platforms, we are now bringing our dirty laundry, per se, out before the people. And because we're doing that, we're too quick in judging matters that we shouldn't be judging, because the rule of law here in America has always been and will continue to be innocent until proven guilty. Innocent until proven guilty. I'm going to repeat it one more time. Innocent until proven guilty. In your communist-controlled countries, in which I disagree with how they want to bully or enslave their society, their people, you don't have this big of a problem. And the reason why is because they do not take the liberty of voicing their opinion openly as much as the American people. So what we're having here is a clash. We're having a clash of our First Amendment rights that we're going too far on as far as expanding our opinions versus communist-controlled countries that don't go far enough pertaining to their leadership. And the reason why, once more, is because of the gizmos and gadgets that we now hold in our hands pertaining to social media. What this individual was talking about here was pertaining to the collusion investigation that has spent 2 years in the making. God only knows at the thousands and thousands of dollars that's been spent in misrepresenting some of the greatest people in our government, that is basically just a takedown job. Rather than trying to take them down physically, we'll take them down emotionally. We'll take them down in other ways, psychological warfare. And for people to use these tools, to weaponize these tools in such of a way pertaining to social media platforms, is really putting out very, very mixed signals, which is causing a calamity with our youth and a calamity with the way that we are supposed to live out our lives and go about our daily businesses. What is fixing to come on now is a is an illustration of that pertaining to the individual actor. That now, I guess, the prosecuting attorneys and the law enforcement agencies in Chicago has rediscovered different truths about a particular actor that was accused of faking his own attack towards being victimized by a bunch of hate-mongering people. Let's watch now as we get further into this towards what is actually occurring in Chicago as I speak.
Thank you, sir. Jesse Smollett's in court. You're going to hear from him in a moment here. That's what we've been told anyway. Just looking at the statement from the attorneys who are now saying that the charges will be dropped by him. Quote, Jesse and many others were hurt by these unfair and unwarranted actions. The entire situation is a reminder that there should never be an attempt to prove a case in the court of public opinion.
In the court of public opinion. That's what we're running into with all the gizmos and gadgets as far as First Amendment rights towards speaking out, regardless whether it be radio announcers, public officials, or people just as myself that want to verbalize what is going on in the headline news and being misdirected because of not seeing all the evidence. Once more, our laws is based around the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help us God. And whenever you're dealing with a society that has now got all these gizmos and gadgets pertaining to social media platforms, it is turning our world here in America right now upside down. And it's not good to be falsely accused of something, similar to what had occurred in my life whenever my brother and I decided that we had this pipe dream that we was going to open up a recovery shelter, not a church. It's never been projected or premeditated as being a church. A church is where you bring forth messages coming out of the Bible. That's strictly a church. Now, there has been recovery shelters that has escalated or has evolved into a church because of their hands-on experience with the general public with great needs, regardless whether it was physical needs or psychological needs or mental needs. There has been a lot of groups that has pulled together towards saying this is what we're going to do for the community, and it evolved into a church. But once more, you have to have more than just a dream. You have to have more than just an ideal, and it ordinarily takes more than just one person. It takes a group of people to come together and say, you know what, this is what we're going to do for the benefit of we the people. Well, whenever my brother and I popped a couple signs out here on this property, they must have thought in this community that had automatically turned into something official, which they was under their own misguided imaginations by thinking that, because there has nothing been processed in the courts pertaining to either getting permits or getting license to work with the general public out here as far as a rehabilitation center. You can't just pop up a building and all of a sudden start working with the general public. That's called malpractice. And malpractice is not only against the law in the state of Tennessee, but it's against the law wherever, unless you get a group of people that comes together, especially the pillars of the community that are associated with the judicial system. That way you can become licensed and bonded properly, and you can be effective in the community. Now, granted, if I would have been in a different community, let's say I would have been in downtown Chicago, and David and I had this piece of property, and we decided that we was going to try to help the community, I believe that we would have got less static or adversity in Chicago because of all the bloodshed and because of all the horror that has occurred in the past 5-10 years in Chicago. I believe that we would have got more of a welcome, more of a red cart welcome in Chicago by getting other officials to back us and support us and to get involved with us than we did out here amongst redneck hillbillyville. Of course, you got to also keep in mind that there's been a lot of misunderstanding towards people that has murmured horrible, horrible bad things about the founder of this particular project out here that has grown and intensified towards Juby, the individual that's talking to you right now, towards him basically being either an antichrist or a monster, which is the furthest thing that anybody could ever remotely falsely accuse me of. And the only reason why that I pleaded guilty to a charge that I never should have pleaded guilty to was because I was in between a hard place and a rock, and because of the way that the court systems had pushed me back off into a corner, even though it was my brother and I that wanted it to go to a higher court, because we did not have faith in the lower court because of an individual that we know that was biased against us by the name of Judge Tommy Moore. We ourselves set ourselves up for a trap, not knowing, A, that my brother was going to die, B, not knowing that the attorney that I had hired did not allow for me to know when the court date was, and gave reverence to that in court, in open court, in front of Judge Parham, and C, the fact that it's obvious that we've got various people in the judicial system and working in Weakley County in Dresden, Tennessee, that does in fact have bias feelings towards the founder of the Windmill Ministries missions, because they have been misguided or misunderstood by various preachers, teachers, theologians, or whatever. I owe this man an apology, because I assumed the day after, whenever all this broke news, especially whenever the psychiatric community started coming on, well, this guy must have some sort of problem upstairs because he faked a hate crime. I, like a lot of people, fell into that same groove, and now we're finding out that this is inaccurate. So let's listen to some more of this. Once more, we're dealing with a complex situation here in America pertaining to First Amendment rights, pertaining to all the gizmos and gadgets, pertaining to open media that is
wrong.
Let's go right here.
These unfair and unwarranted actions. The entire situation is a reminder that there should never be an attempt to prove a case in the court of public opinion.
In the court of public opinion. Because once more, we live in a system here in America that you are automatically supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. Not guilty until proven innocent. And I think that is what has occurred here pertaining to our social media status. That is a new frontier for our democracy, is that we live in a country of gossip. We live in a country of drama. And if we can't find problems in our own lives, because most people don't want to air their own dirty laundry pertaining to their problems, we choose to pick on other people and other people's dirty laundry. But by being too opinionated is what has caused this unjust due that now we're fixing to find out about. Let's watch.
That is wrong. It is a reminder that a victim, in this case Jesse, deserves dignity and respect. Dismissal of charges against the victim in this case was the only just result. It's a 3-paragraph statement from attorneys. That's just the second of 3 there, Sandra.
Really something when you read through it. Jesse was attacked. His lawyers make the case by 2 people he was unable to identify on January 29th. He was a victim who was vilified and made to appear as a perpetrator as a result of false and inappropriate remarks made to the public, causing an inappropriate rush to judgment. In the initial statement of this statement, Bill, it says today all criminal charges against Jesse Smollett have been dropped and his record has been wiped clean of the filing of this tragic complaint.
Yeah.
Again,
once more, we have to look at the tools that Satan has provided for us pertaining to these gizmos and gadgets that we now hold in our hands. These can be used as an asset to better humanity, or these can be used as weaponry to destroy humanity. And this is where we are right now. We're trying to adapt to a new way of life because it hadn't been too long ago that Ma Bell was the leading sponsor in communications, and it was only until, I guess, the 80s, whenever AT&T jumped into the pile, and then other communication organizations jumped into the pile, and it hasn't been but just for the past 25, 30 years that we have had to adapt to this hands-on data documentation of various cases in various people's lives, including my own. This is all a new frontier. And like I said, in the communist control country, which I don't agree with, they do not have this liberty, this privilege of like we have towards First Amendment rights, towards being able to yak and talk and gossip and make false accusations. They don't have radio announcers that get on live stream TV or radio or satellite or internet that just get up there and just yak and yak and yak and yak and yak like they do over here in America. And because this is a new tool that Satan has provided for the Homo sapien race, now it's being used to dilapidate humanity rather than to enhance or build humanity. And I'm not saying that there's not parts of the internet that are not efficient and sufficient towards enhancing society, but then there's other parts of the internet, like we're seeing right here, towards people being quick to judge, that are destroying our democracy, that is hurting our amendment rights as far as our Constitution. And I don't know if any of this makes any sense to anybody or not, but this is just what God has showed me about where we are now presently in 2019 here in America.
Matt Finn's going to be on air in a moment here. So is the judge, Anna Napolitano. This is what Napolitano is sending me by way of email. He says, Matt Finn says the court granted a complete exoneration. It means the state has no case that can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. The indictment is dismissed and the arrest records are expunged. So no record in Chicago for Smollett.
And his lawyer said he was relieved to have the situation behind him, and he's very much looking forward to getting back to focusing on his family, friends, and career. We've got that live shot up there at the courthouse. We do expect to hear from him and his lawyers. Keep it right here. We'll be right back.
And as far as I am concerned, me personally, I don't know who else feels the same way as I do, but now since the truth has been told about our endeavors out here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, pertaining to all the adversity that arose from not just one particular family, but several, I personally believe that my record should be expunged. It should be dilapidated from the judicial system laws for several reasons, and the main reason is because I have never, in my entire life, as many scrapes as I have had with various law enforcement agencies, regardless whether they was in Oklahoma, Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, Kentucky, I have never had a felony placed upon my life. But lo and behold, I come home to my home county, to my home state, 4 years ago. And it's been just about 4 years now. Maybe liking just a little bit, maybe a month. But I come back home, lo and behold, the very community that tried to destroy me from begin with, that never did want to support the Windmill Ministries missions, that snarled up their nose, that said, this man is bogus, this man is a liar, this man is a manipulator, this man is a con, this man is lying. The very community that started the character assassination upon my life almost completed it, and would have had if I did not stand up to them and face them face to face, as far as facing my peers, and make this as socially known as I have on my social media platforms. They would have had. I wouldn't have had a snowball chance in hell towards ever establishing not just the St. Dale's Recovery Shelter at 291 Thompson Road, but the Windmill Ministries missions. These people have tried to execute my soul. My very soul is what that they have been after. And to sit back and to watch it escalate the way that it did, coming back to my hometown, to my home county, to my home state, and to be treated this way, goes beyond anything comprehensible that I have ever studied or read or learned about, other than the atrocities that occurred during the Civil War. I have never seen a society that was so set in cutting off its own nose to despite its face as I have right here, either in Obion County or in Weakley County. And it wasn't just Obion County and Weakley County that rejected the message 30 years ago in 1989, whenever I was falsely accused of doing a celebrity stunt. Similar towards what this man right here was falsely accused of. He was accused of basically creating a celebrity stunt. All right? Now they're finding out in Chicago that it was not a celebrity stunt. Now they're finding out more facts about the case. I wonder now, since the general public is finding out more facts about my case if there will be a change or a turnover in their positions that they hold here in Weakley County as far as their judicial system that, as far as I am concerned, is corrupt as far as long as the day is long. Corrupt. You see, the officials that are in power are only as good as the people that put them in power. And whenever you have a judge and a sheriff and other law enforcement people in law enforcement agency positions, and it's not just here in Tennessee, it goes on in Kentucky, it goes on in Georgia, it goes on in other parts of the country, all over the country. But whenever you have officials that have been in power for 15, 18, 20, 22, 28, 32 years, lifelong career politicians, it's pretty obvious that you're no longer dealing with a judicial system that our ancestors originated to set up. No. Now we're dealing with a buddy-buddy system to where if this one does something, he or she basically gets off with the next thing to cold-blooded murder. But on the other hand, somebody such as myself, in which I have said this before, so much as steps on a damn wooden nickel, oh, we're going to execute this guy. We're going to put him away. We think he's a fraud. We think that he's crappy in his ideals. And they're actually not calling me a fraud, but they're calling the things that I believe in as being fraudulent. But yet, no, they go to church on Sunday mornings and Sunday nights. They claim that they believe the Bible, but they're not living the Bible. The only thing that I have done is try to promote the message coming out of the Bible. I'm not promoting Buddha. I'm not promoting some other kind of weirdo, fanatical ideal such as the Wiccans or the Ancient Ones or some other kind of Jim Jones theories or ideals. The things that I've been talking about and discussing is coming out of the Bible. The very thing that they're supposed to be believing in. And because they was not only non-supportive for the past 30 years, now I come back to the same group of people. And now they have changed their tactics. Rather than being non-supporters, now we're going to attack him. Similar to what they done in 2005, right up here in Martin, Tennessee, simply because I used a word to express myself that was based around biblical Bible prophecies as far as it was as the noise of thunder, expressing to an individual, a teller, in Martin, independently, by himself, that there was possibly going to be controversy in my life to the point that I wind up on the Channel 6 News. Get hauled from another county illegitimately without any escort from, I think it's Henderson County, up towards Huntington, maybe Carroll County. But get hauled back from another county, and after telling people, no, you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. I didn't mean that at all. And still go before a judge with, once more, Benjamin Dempsey representing the client, to the point that they brought shame and humiliation to my life, and I wound up losing a 5-acre mini farm. I wound up losing my job, and I wound up losing my wife, and I wound up having to move plumb out of this area and move to Nashville, Tennessee, Davidson County. When is this going to stop? When is the unjust, illegitimate dues that our law enforcement agencies that are attacking their citizens, when is this going to stop? Is it only going to stop whenever it occurs to you, whenever you have the same type of mishap? Because I promise you, whenever they get through with you, you're liable to not have not only a place to live or operate, but you're liable to not have a seat to sit on, because whenever they get through wearing your you-know-what out that you sat on, you'll be so gun-shy that you'll crawl off into a cave somewhere and stick your head into a sand like an ostrich. And that's what they was hoping that would have occurred in my life. But instead of Juby running away from the flames and the fire, old Juby run back into them. Run back into the mouth of the lion. The beast that had caused so much havoc to begin with, beginning with the people in Kenton, Tennessee, of their law enforcement redneck hillbilly ways. And then it exerted over into the Neal family. By the Neal family not wanting to mentor, help, and be there for this individual that had such of a passion for wanting to know the truth coming out of the Bible. Oh, what a tangled web that people do weave when first they look and then they realize they've been deceived. The Bible says that pride cometh before a fall. And we, right now, are in the spiral positioning of falling.
And his attorneys were. The prosecution approached the bench and the judge and said, after review of all the evidence and considering Jussie Smollett's involvement in the community here, they have decided to no longer prosecute this case. They filed a no pros documentation, which is basically a request or a notice of no more prosecution, and the judge granted that. Of course, Jussie Smollett's attorneys happily accepted that the prosecutors were no longer going to pursue this case. Smollett was in and out of court in a matter of minutes. Right now, a spokesperson says that he's in a separate courtroom filling paperwork, and then we expect him and his team, Smollett, to take to the mics here. This came at extremely unexpected here in Chicago. Just a few weeks ago, a grand jury here returned 16 felony counts of disorderly conduct for filing a false report, and a lot of people consider those 16 charges an indication that Smollett had a pretty tough battle ahead of him here in the court. But it looks like right now a judge has granted the prosecution's request to drop this case, and we're waiting to hear from Jussie Smollett himself.
Okay, Matt Finn, as soon as you have anything else, we'll get right back to you and when they begin speaking. Matt, thank you.
Try and interpret as much as we can with the judge. Fox News senior judicial analyst Anna Napolitano. Sir, hello.
Hey, Bill.
What do you make of Matt Finn's reporting there from the court?
Well, the case would be dropped for one of two reasons. Either because the government decided it could not prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, notwithstanding what evidence it has, or because it decided to grant Smollett what's called a deferred prosecution, which means a short period of probation at the end of which the charges would be dismissed, and he can actually ask for an expungement, which means an eradication of the arrest record. However, from the description Matt Finn gave us, it sounds as if the government is asked to dismiss its own indictment. Quite frankly, this is almost unheard of. It is either the result of extraordinary lawyering on the part of his lawyers or a realization by the government of some defect in its evidence that it did not know it had at the time it sought and obtained an indictment against him.
Okay, 16 counts, right? That's what he was facing. You had these two brothers who were apparently colleagues of his. They worked out together. I think
Right.
they worked on the show Empire as well.
Right.
They would, I imagine, those were your two best witnesses, Judge, right?
Yes.
So initially we thought that they brought the evidence and they gave up the goods.
Yes.
Are we to assume that either they didn't have it in the first place or they changed their story?
Well, one of those, Bill, or perhaps the government doing an investigation after indictment rather than before indictment discovered something in their backgrounds which would make it impractical or almost impossible to put them on a witness stand. Now, the 16-count indictment was really overkill. It basically was one charge for every time Jussie Smollett spoke to the cops, even though he basically said the same thing each time he spoke to them. So it should have been a one-count indictment. Instead, they did 16. Why? Because the police were furious that they had been played, in their view, and used by Jussie Smollett. We may get a different story now when his lawyers come to those microphones.
Okay, so here's the story we thought we knew. Reading from the AP story now, police and prosecutors have said the black and gay actor falsely reported to authorities that he was attacked on January 29 downtown Chicago because he was unhappy with his pay on the Fox show and to promote his own career. So what happened since the 29th of January when they put that story together and today? We don't know.
Well, we'll find out soon, and it's one of two events, in my view. They either discovered some impediment to the presentation of this case, something in the background of the witnesses that would make them not credible before a jury, or they decided to grant him this once-in-a-lifetime deal, which almost everybody gets in the United States when the crime is not one of violence, not one of distribution of drugs, and not part of an organized criminal enterprise, which is a deferred prosecution. This is the same type of deal that was offered to Bob Kraft in Florida, which he rejected because in Florida they required an admission of guilt. If this is a deferred prosecution, which will result in the dismissal of the charges, in Chicago it does not require an admission of guilt.
Okay, you just said a moment ago that this almost never happens for prosecutors. Which aspect of that, Judge?
The dropping of their own case within a month of indictment because they discovered a defect in the case. If that is what happened, that's very poor policing on the part of the prosecutors because they should have known of that defect before they sought his indictment.
All right, Judge, hang on one moment. Sanders got the statement again from his attorney.
Here's Smollett's attorneys issuing this statement about the hearing, after the hearing, I should say. Today, all criminal charges against Jussie Smollett were dropped, and his record has been wiped clean of the filing of this tragic complaint against him. Jussie was attacked by two people he was unable to identify on January 29th. He was a victim who was vilified and made to appear as a perpetrator as a result of false and inappropriate remarks made to the public, causing an inappropriate rush to judgment. Jussie and many others were hurt by these unfair and unwarranted actions. This entire situation is a reminder that there should never be an attempt to prove a case in the court of public opinion. That is wrong. It is a reminder that a victim, in this case Jussie, deserves dignity and respect. Dismissal of charges against the victim in this case was the only just result. Jussie is relieved to have this situation behind him and is very much looking forward to getting back to focusing on his family, friends, and career. Judge, if you're still with us, we're watching the cameras here because the microphones, because we were told that his attorneys, as well as Jussie Smollett himself, are expected to make some sort of statement when they walk out of the courtroom. Why would this have been such a surprise? First, we weren't anticipating that he was.
I want to stop right there, and once more, I'm using this right now, what's going on with Jesse's life, in correspondence to my personal life. After David and I had completed putting up this building, give or take about 80-85%, I decided that I would go down and get a copier to print out me some leaflets pertaining to the Veterans Administration, because that's once more where our pipe dream or our heart was, towards trying to bring some sort of help in the suicide prevention counseling center of not only what was going on with our United States military, but also in the general public. And of course, since then, I'm pretty sure that you have heard of various shootings that has occurred all over the country that has escalated a suicide problem with children as well as parents. But whenever I started promoting these cards out to the general public, as well as going to the Capitol and putting out these cards, a person by the name of Billy Sanderson, which is a representative for this area from the state of Tennessee, put out messages of discriminatory against my and David's ideals, and promoted me as me being a could-be, would-be Unabomber because of the occurrence that happened out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Not realizing that the information that I did stumble upon was in fact correct, that there was a cover-up in regard to the Oklahoma bombing, and that I had proof of it. Once more, I've got law enforcement officials, not only countywide, but statewide, as well as federal-wide, that has tried to destroy my character. They have done everything in the world to try to bring a black mark against the very person that's talking to you right now. But yet no, there's been no accountability. There hasn't been no accountability towards what went on with the people across the street, that had children, that was acting inappropriate in front of the children, and we got documentation of this. We can prove this. We can validate that these people was acting inappropriate in front of children and around children. We can validate that an ambulance had pulled up out here, I know, once, possibly 3 different times, maybe twice, towards picking the girl up because the boy got too abusive with the girlfriend. Once more, it is a federal law that if you see children that are being abused, that if you do not turn that in, you yourself can go to jail. Because you was aware that these children was being exposed to an environment that they shouldn't have been exposed to, but you didn't turn it in. They twisted it and turned it around pertaining to their prosecuting attorneys here in this county. And the next thing you know, I get charged for stalking after there was no warrant ever served. And then faced with a dilemma of a $50,000 bond after my brother had died, not knowing when the arraignment trial was going to be that we was wanting to have to begin with, because we did not trust the professionalism coming out of Tommy Moore. And the only way for me to have gotten out of that dilemma was to have plead guilty to a charge that I never should have been charged with to begin with. I have never seen so much unjust due. And it's one thing if you don't want to support the Windmill Ministries missions. We've never had a problem in that. We still don't have a problem in that. You know, there's been many men of God and women that went throughout their whole lifespan and never gained any converts. We don't have no problem in not supporting us, but what we do have a problem is attacking us and lying upon to us and putting out false images of us and deleting or deformating our character in such of a horrible way, knowing that we're trying to help you. We're trying to wake you up. Just like in 2005, whenever I sent out a t-shirt to the 43rd President of the United States, which was young Bush, that a bloody road is coming. A bloody road is ahead. And instead of it being accepted as a advisory. They tried to turn it into a threat. What type of society are we dealing with over here? That's the $64,000 question, especially whenever we are so quick to judge, condemn. And you wonder how come the wrath of God has been upon to this nation for the past few years towards seeing horrendous acts of Mother Nature act out in such a way, beginning, I guess, with really Katrina in 2005, in addition to what went on in 93 with Mount Carmel, and then in 95 with Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and then in 2001 pertaining to 9/11. I mean, what is it going to take to awaken these people that are in either a coma or a semi-coma over here in America? What is it going to take to awaken them towards that they have been bamboozled in so many different ways? It's not even funny.
Even making an appearance in court this morning, Judge, and here he is, and he makes the statement, and we learn this. Why would there not have been any information leading up to such a surprise turn of events?
Because sometimes the best lawyering occurs behind the scenes, where defense counsel sits down with the prosecutor and they go through the evidence piece by piece together, and defense counsel explains to the prosecutors how this evidence is not valid and how they can cause it to be disrespected in the courtroom, and sometimes prosecutors agree. It's very unusual for prosecutors to do this, but they cannot ethically present a case that they don't believe they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And if this type of lawyering behind the scenes can result in persuading the prosecutors of fatal defects in their own case, it is their ethical duty to dismiss the charges.
There you go. Their ethical duty. Judge Yuri, or Younger, up in Martin, Tennessee, handled the case pertaining to the Donald Ridgeway case out here while David was living in more than one affair. Paid him good money. He sat back and watched these things escalate and grow and intensify to the point of my brother's death, and him himself conducting a legal fee for my brother's estate out here. So now these people have become witnesses towards the ineffectiveness in the judicial system here in Weakley County pertaining to dereliction of duty. Dereliction of duty. Dereliction of duty is what Tommy Moore should be charged with, pertaining to him not effectively doing his job. Even before I come back here in 2014, David was having problems, and Danny, my older brother, and my father was having problems with these people out here. There's a record of it in the sheriff's department. It's undeniable. They can't deny it. There was a problem out here with the family way before I ever come here. And then whenever I come out here, I started having to deal with the insanity. But no, we're not the ones. The Ridgeway family aren't the ones that's insane. It's Juby the one that's insane. Even though the problems had occurred with the Jackson family way before Juby ever come back in 2014. And if people can't read the writing on the wall towards what is going on here, then they're just as blind as the judicial system in this county. And they're just as guilty as the neighborhoods around here, the people around here that have watched this escalate, not just from 2014 to now, but also what went on in our childhood behavior towards seeing our father that had a sickness openly, basically abuse his children and his wife right in front of the neighborhood, and the neighborhood never done nothing about it. Does that not speak volumes about the people in this neighborhood that witnessed all of that years and years ago? Sure it does. Sure it speaks volumes. Because I guarantee you, if those occurrences was happening to their children, they would have put an end to it. They would have stopped it. They would have contacted somebody. Somebody's ass would have been on the line if they was going to treat their children that way. But did they care about old Bob's kids? If the truth be known, they probably didn't even care about their own. They thought that this method of beating kids and putting emotional scars on them was not only proper, but it was acceptable and the right thing to do. I have never run into so much ignorance and intolerableness in my entire life than since I've come back here in 2014. And we're talking about the professionals. We're talking about the experts. We're talking about the people that's supposed to know better pertaining to judges and attorneys and law enforcement agencies, regardless whether it's city or county. Sad. Sad.
Judge Andrew Napolitano, if you could stand by with us.
Andy McCarthy, former assistant U.S. attorney, Fox News contributor. Double dose for you, rather, I should say. Double duty, Andy. Good morning. Welcome back here. What do you make right now? What we're hearing from Chicago?
Well, it's a stunning surprise. I think it'd be very interesting, obviously, to know what their rationale was. The remarks that have been made by Mr. Smollett's camp are framing him or portraying him as the victim, as if we didn't know everything we thought we had learned weeks ago about this case. So it'll be very interesting to hear, if we hear anything more from the prosecutors, what their rationale was for finding that dropping the entire case was a just result.
Just to jog a little bit of memory here, remember this went on for days in Chicago where police were investigating, and they were combing the cameras all around that area where Jesse Smollett had an apartment while they were filming the show. And based on the reporting anyway, there was nothing that really showed up on the cameras that gave them a definitive answer or link to the two individuals that he described. It was about a week later, Andy, when the two brothers returned home from Nigeria. They were back in Chicago, and I think they were held for at least 2 days for questioning by police.
Yeah, what you would really want to know here, Bill, is these two guys would have been the main witnesses in the case, obviously, and the question is, did whatever they told the police when they made whatever confession they appear to have made, is that something that they recanted ultimately, and what's behind that? You would think that if the government went through the trouble of bringing this case in 16 charges and all the hullabaloo that went with it, and they just quietly drop it, something had to have gone wrong in the case. And if it's not the
Once more, the psychiatric community got involved the day after and started spewing out stuff about this guy being emotionally unstable, as far as him bringing this type of disorder into his own life. It's so obvious that we're no longer living in the good old USA anymore, towards innocent until proven guilty. We're living in a nation that is so quick to condemn, judge, condemn. We're living in a nation that people think that they have the right to become the judge, the jury, and the executioner all at the same time, to the point that they are abusing the First Amendment rights. And of course, whenever you put these little devices in their hands, it only amplifies it to the point of causing that much more harm, that much more confusion, and that much more psychological damage. I've never seen America like it is right now. And it is so, so sad.
I can't imagine what it is.
Andy, we look back and we're digging up the sound too from when Eddie Johnson, the Chicago police superintendent, initially announced these charges, as you just detailed, 16 counts of disorderly conduct for allegedly hiring two men to attack him in the staged hate crime attack that we followed for the hours and days that followed what was really a mystery at the time. Eddie Johnson doubled down on what was the collective police theory that he staged this attack. And he even claimed that there was a lot more evidence that hasn't been presented yet that does not support the version of the story that Smollett gave. I mean, you go back to the things that we heard from the police superintendent about the hard evidence that they knew that they had.
Yeah. Well, it's always perilous, Sandra, to speculate when we don't know all the facts. But, educated speculation would say when they talked about having lots more evidence, what they meant is that once the two guys who were involved in this told them what actually happened, that they were able to go out and corroborate that version of events. That can all be made to look like an awful lot of evidence as long as the witnesses stay strong and they stay consistent with what their version of events that they gave the police is. If they recant, then all the corroborating evidence is kind of useless at that point.
Judge, coming back to the conversation, I imagine police have some explaining to do now. Remember, police in Chicago say Smollett hired the two men, both of whom are black, to attack him, and that Smollett paid them $3,500 in a check. Where does that claim go now?
Well, I mean, if the government is going to drop its case, it has a duty to try and find the people that actually caused this to happen. Now, the government may be of two minds here. It may be of the mind that Jesse Smollett did concoct this thing on his own, but they can't prove it, and therefore they're going to end it. Or that Jesse Smollett did not concoct this on his own. The two witnesses are defective for whatever reason, something in their backgrounds, or as Andy McCarthy suggested, they recanted their original statements, and the true culprits are still out there, and they have a legal and moral obligation to find those culprits. We might not know the answer to this when Jesse, forgive me, and his lawyers come out. We might not know the answer to this until the prosecutors come out and explain to us why you withdrew a complaint, why you withdrew a 16-count indictment which you announced with tremendous fanfare and which you purported to support with established credible evidence.
Looking back at Gloria Schmidt joined Bill and I on this program, the attorney representing the two brothers in this case, and was just looking back at the transcript here when we asked her about their involvement in it, and she said, I don't know what the prosecutors have said or not said, but I know in terms of their legal analysis, and I'm quoting her, they're not in any peril, talking about the two brothers. What this case really is about is a person in a position of trust who really betrayed my clients and took advantage of them. And Judge, I'm sure in the days that follow now, we'll all look back at the transcripts and see what was said that led up to this moment.
Well, again, we don't know. Again, this is highly unusual for the government to do this. But if the government discovers, usually through interaction with defense counsel, a fatal flaw in its case, it has the duty to go to the court and ask the court to dismiss it. And that is apparently what happened this morning.
So we are, sorry, Judge, go.
In other words, they're doing the ethical, moral right thing by saying no competition.
Andy McCarthy can tell you, the seasoned prosecutor that he is, this, I hate to use this phrase, almost never happens because the government investigates its own case before it files charges. In this case, they filed charges and then apparently discovered whatever this defect was. Presumably we'll know shortly.
Let's bounce from that to Andy McCarthy's response on it, Andy.
Yeah, the judge is right about that, and I'd also say, the tea leaves seem to indicate that Smollett's camp is going to come out and say at this point that he was the victim of this attack. I have to say that if I were the prosecutor and I had been persuaded to drop these charges, but I felt like I knew what actually happened, I simply couldn't prove it, and then he went out and said he was the victim. Unless he was the victim, that would make me awfully angry. And as the judge points out, you don't do this kind of bells and whistles press conference and roll out your 16-count indictment unless you're very confident that you can prove the case in court. So to have things fall out the way that they've fallen out here is really stunning. And usually, if you really are somebody who's caught a break like this, what you want to do is kind of quietly go away. You don't.
Shows you that the professionals and the experts are no longer professionals and experts. That's what it shows me. Human error. Human error that's been going on here in America for years and years and years. Towards once more, we're no longer operating under the pretenses of a true judicial government. We're now operating on a buddy-buddy system deal, to where if you're the right person with the right persona, with the right money, with the right prestige in the neighborhood, you can basically get away with cold-blooded murder. But if you're the wrong person, if you so much as step on a wooden nickel, you're going to jail. We're going to ruin your character. We're going to ruin everything about you because we don't like you for whatever reason. That's what it's telling me that America is turning into. And of course it amplifies it with the social media platforms that everybody's got.
Want to flaunt that in the
Let's
in law
fast forward
enforcement
just for a
people's face.
second. This is all brand new to me. This guy's fixing to speak here. I don't want to go too fast to the point that I can't see. But let's fast forward this. These are people coming in and out of the courtroom there in Cook County. And I'm pretty sure there's going to be somebody that's fixing to speak. Because right now they're just talking about technicality stuff. Legal technicality issues. We're still waiting on Jesse and his attorneys. Now we're at a commercial, so we can fast forward it a little bit quicker until we get back to this case. All right.
This is against actor Jussie Smollett. Just moments ago, he is expected to speak any moment now.
Okay. He's expected to speak.
Especially an African-American man, used the symbolism of a noose to make false accusations. How could someone look at the hatred and suffering associated with that symbol and see an opportunity to manipulate that symbol to further his own public profile? How can an individual who's been embraced by the city of Chicago turn around and slap everyone in this city in the face by making these false claims?
And Matt Finn is live at the courthouse in Chicago with the latest. And Matt, we remember that moment when Eddie Johnson stepped up to the microphone, very passionately laid out the charges against Smollett. 16 counts of disorderly conduct for allegedly committing a hate crime hoax. And now what are we learning at the courthouse there, Matt?
Well, with that said, you have to wonder right now how Chicago police feel, because so
Charges
many people
has
here
been
and
dropped.
really nationwide consider Chicago police's
Let's move on. That's what we're learning. The charges has been dropped. Boy, oh boy, the media. That's just like the media in the Oklahoma bombing. Before 30 minutes was over with, they was already falsely accusing Arabs of blowing up the Memorial Building there in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, until they done a back check and figured out that it wasn't Arabs, but that it was homegrown. And of course, whenever they found a license plate on an automobile that was fixing to fall off, that Timothy McVeigh was driving, and they captured the individual, that's whenever they had to reframe from their whole story out there in Oklahoma, that this was not done by domestic terrorism, but by homegrown terrorism. Once more, too quick to judge, too quick opinionated. We're living in a society here in America that spew out these images of guilt and images of this and images of that, and we're no longer living in the same society as what we was living in 25, 30 years ago. You can't tell me that media, as far as communications, is not powerful. It is very influential. Very influential. Oh, they still lagging this on, it looks like. The media dramatizes things. You know, once they figure out that something has occurred, well, you just hang on now. Wait just a minute. Let us get it out there to the public and let us say what we need to say. And then you slip around the corner and you act like that you're unexpected towards what you're going to do here, towards standing in front of all these microphones and saying what you're going to say. By the way, what are you going to say? We want to know what you're going to say before you say it. How are you going to say it? I think the Rodney King riots was kind of a wake-up call whenever all the violence was going on in downtown Los Angeles. And finally, they got him in front of a bunch of microphones, and he made a plea towards everybody settling down and being patient with the calling of the rule of law. I think that was another misrepresentation of open social media on a platform of communications that was being communicated in a wrong way or an unjust way. And how many more other cases have we seen that was similar to these type of scenarios, to where they just totally missed it. Just they swung at it and missed it by 3 foot. There's my idiot. There's my psychotic friend. Come out here and just lay down on the horn. So I'm not lying about that neither now, am I? About what type of torment and intolerableness that I got to put up with out here at 291 Thompson Road. That once more, as far as I'm concerned, the judicial system helped to create this monster that they cannot contain. The monster that rides around agitating and aggravating and bringing false accusations to the community towards wanting to detriment one's character.
Watching to the left, that bank of microphones, that gentleman, as we're told, has nothing to do with this case. We're waiting for Jesse's.
We're still waiting on Jesse. Let's see if we can go a little faster here. Hold it.
Appears to be his attorney first.
Here we
Let's
go.
listen.
Here we go. Listen up.
Good afternoon. Today, as you have figured out, the state made a motion to nollie-pros the charges against Jussie Smollett and to seal the record in this case. We believe that it was the correct result in this case. We're very happy for this result, and we are very anxious for Jussie to get on with his career and his life and to move forward. I'll take any questions.
Was this part of a deferred prosecution?
This is not, there is no deferred prosecution. The motion was to nollie-pros, which is a legal technical term for dismiss the charges.
Why did he give up bond money?
Jussie voluntarily agreed to the forfeiture of the bond money.
So is this going?
We believe to the city of Chicago, but we don't know.
Is it a deal or not a deal if he's giving up his bond?
There is no deal. The state dismissed the charges. There is nothing. We have nothing to say to the police department except to investigate charges and not try their cases in the press, but to allow matters to be investigated, allow the state to investigate and to bring charges, and not to jump ahead and utilize the press to convict people before they are tried in a court of law.
Once more, this is a total flub up by the judicial system in Cook County, Illinois, Chicago. This is a flub up. Just like it's a flub up pertaining to an idiot that you just got through witnessing in a red Suburban vehicle that comes out here routinely on a day-to-day basis, agitating and aggravating and bringing torment. When David was working in the second shift, knowing that he had to leave work at around 2:15 to get down to McLean Power at 3, Donald Ridgeway would come by in the mornings, lay down on the horn out here in the middle of the countryside where you're not adjusted to those type of noises. It would be different if we was in New York, to where we heard subway trains go by and you hear horns and you hear all kinds of other commotions. This is not the normal around here. The normal around here is listening to birds chirp. Maybe every now and then you may hear an airplane fly over. That's the normal. But to have somebody out here in the middle of the country that's purposely riding by, agitating people's lives, knowing that they've got responsibilities to do, that is a deliberate act of torture. And as far as I am concerned, this whole ordeal has been cruel and unusual treatment that has been brought on by the judicial system and by various churches in this area that has allowed for this to occur. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, not times 10 as far as 30 times, but I would go as far as say times 100 of 300 plus times that this obnoxiousness continues to go on and on and on and on. Now, one must have to ask the question, why would a 70-year-old man continue to do this? What is his motive? What is the end game? Is he trying to drive Juby crazy to the point that Juby goes off the deep end and then Juby himself breaks the law? Because obviously he must feel like the law is protecting him to continue to do this again and again and again and again and again and again, times again. What is the end game? Does he want this property? Does he want me to run off like a little dog with its tail tucked between its legs and feel defeated and manipulated by the bully? What is the end game here is what I want to know. Because I've been here now for 4 years and this has not settled down. If anything, it has escalated. Just because the telephone call stopped, boys and girls, going to the sheriff's department that I no longer trust, the judicial system, because of the people that's in control of the judicial system in this county. Just because the telephone calls has stopped doesn't mean that the torment has stopped. Doesn't mean that the harassment, the stalking, the intolerablenesses have stopped. Now it's gotten to the point that I can be at somebody's house. And this idiot suddenly appears in my life and brings all these type of accusations once more in trying to provoke. If I can press the right buttons with Juby, if I can dig deep enough, I can get me a fire out of him somewhere. And for society around here to sit and watch this, they're a part of this. They don't understand that they're guilty of allowing for this to occur, just like they was guilty years ago by watching my father abuse his children. And nobody that was willing to stand up to my father, either directly or indirectly, by contacting the right officials and stopping the type of abuse. It's a very, very sick society that I'm in right now. As far as I'm concerned, it goes beyond a psychiatric ward. And that's exactly what a lot of our jail systems has turned into. Nothing more than a psychiatric ward, because as soon as you get in there, you're in there with people that has messed up minds, messed up souls, messed up lives, because they've done everything from Drano to Xanaxes to Demerol to morphine to smoking weed to the point that they're nothing but a bunch of burnouts. They've done crystal meth. They've done other types of chemicals like heroin and other types of chemicals, and they've messed their minds up. They've messed their souls up. They've messed their families up. They've messed their jobs up. This is the environment that I'm in. And David and I tried and tried and tried desperately, dozens and dozens and dozens of times of getting help. And the only thing that we got was negativity, unprofessional help from a bunch of unprofessional people working in the courthouse that are supposed to be professional experts in handling situations like this. Let's listen to this case. I don't want to deviate completely away from this case because this man deserves to be heard properly and professionally before the world, especially since he has been exonerated from a crime that he never should have been charged with to begin with. This man deserves, rightfully deserves, his part and his place towards standing up and explaining what the heck has just occurred.
Are there reports for the city? Are you going to take legal reports to the city or the two brothers?
Next question.
You won't say whether you'll need reports?
Uh,
Do you think that the city is putting a lot of attention on because of the pressure that is coming from not just here in Chicago, but with all the attention nationwide?
I have no idea what occurred in this case and why it occurred. I can just say that things seem to spiral somewhat out of control. We've gotten
somewhat
result that is the right result in this case, and we're happy for that.
And what is conversation up in here?
I have no idea what.
They're violating the city. Any idea what the state's attorney?
Plenty of people forfeit their bond in situations like this. Jussie is, and as if you were in the courtroom, heard the prosecutor say, and we made sure that the prosecution knew. He is someone who has dedicated his life to public service since he was 15 years old. He has taken the city of Chicago as his home. He has volunteered in a variety of ways. He is a good, solid citizen of the city of Chicago. That was the comment made by the prosecutor today.
See, I didn't know all of that until just now. So basically, his works of trying to engulf into the sainthood is very similar to what has occurred in my life towards trying to do the right thing, but being kicked in the head, thrown under the bus, penalized for trying to be a good Samaritan to society. That's what it sounds like to me now. You can take your own judgment for your own self, but that's what it just sounded like to me, because I did not know that he's got a pattern of being a good Samaritan in that area. I did not know that. And if the truth be known, probably nobody else did neither. Once more, we just assume the worst about people whenever someone says, oh, they're guilty, they're guilty. Oh, well, they must be guilty. Which, once more, what has embedded this type of atmosphere in people's minds and in people's hearts here in America? Because that's not the rule of law. The rule of law is innocent until proven guilty. Satan has done this. The wicked one has moved into people's hearts and minds, and they have created this atmosphere in people's persona of how that we compartmentalize each other. And because of it, everybody wants to bring up everybody else's dirty laundry, but their own.
And the Ondero brothers said more than once that the $3,500 check they received was for exactly what Jussie said. It was for nutrition and training. They were his trainers. That statement was not true. I don't know where the superintendent got that information. I was not privy to it, and quite frankly have not seen that footage, so I have no idea where that came from, which is why you should allow investigation and allow the state to investigate a charge
do its job.
Go to the press. I have no idea. I don't have information that the state would have as to why they brought these charges. I don't know. You'd have to ask the state. The two men who attacked him have indicated that they attacked him, so we already know who attacked him. Those brothers have, well, that's up to the state.
To be clear, the $10,000 beneficiation of dropping the charges or getting that money?
No.
The two men who attacked one of the brothers, why are you doing it?
Well, the two brothers have said that they attacked him, so,
if he's a victim,
we don't want to try them in the press any more than he wanted to be tried in the press. That decision was made so that he could go on with his life and get this over with and not have to fight and not have to continue with all of the disruption to his career. He is a very sweet individual who has for a lifetime dedicated himself to his career, to the public, to children, to the movement in the LGBTQIA community. And this was a disruption to that. He wants to get back to it. I'll allow you to hear from him briefly, and then we're gone.
Hey, everybody. I just made a couple notes. First of all, I want to thank my family, my friends, the incredible people of Chicago, and all over the country and the world who have prayed for me, who have supported me, who've shown me so much love. No one will ever know how much that has meant to me, and I will forever be grateful. I want you to know that not for a moment Was it in vain? I've been truthful and consistent on every single level since day one. I would not be my mother's son if I was capable of one drop of what I've been accused of. This has been an incredibly difficult time, honestly one of the worst of my entire life. But I'm a man of faith, and I'm a man that has knowledge of my history, and I would not bring my family, our lives, or the movement through a fire like this. I just wouldn't. So I want to thank my legal counsel from the bottom of my heart. And I would also like to thank the state of Illinois for attempting to do what's right. Now, I'd like nothing more than to just get back to work and move on with my life. But make no mistakes, I will always continue to fight for the justice, equality, and betterment of marginalized people everywhere. So again, thank you for all the support. Thank you for faith, and thank you to God. Bless y'all. Thank you very much.
It is so sad how that the Christian society here in America are being attacked for doing the right thing. I had no earthly idea the background of this gentleman that just got through speaking. And if the truth be known, probably the majority of the American people in the world didn't know his background. It is so bad whenever we're taking the good and trying to distort it as it being bad, and taking the bad and distorting it as it being good. This country has been turned upside down with its paranormal behavior, its Harry Potter, supernatural, demonic, sorcery type environment that it has created here for itself. This country has been turned upside down in its ideology and in its principles that at one time we used to stand up and say, this is who we are. They have become perverted. Not all, but the majority have become perverted here in America to the point that they're now calling good bad and bad good. And it's sad. It is really, really sad of living in Northwest Tennessee, knowing that I know that our intentions of putting up this cross called the broken cross and being out in the eyes of the general public for 30 years promoting a message of love, peace, grace that surrounds John 3:16, and yes, the message of the end time events coming out of Revelations. That's all part of it. You can't cherry pick the Bible, and parts of it you believe and parts of it you don't believe. Parts of it you're going to abide by and the other parts you're not going to abide by. You're either sold out fully into this thing or you're not. And I think that's one of the big handicaps that has occurred in the past 30 years is that so many people cherry pick the Bible. Well, we're going to believe this part and the other part we're not going to believe. Or we're going to abide by this standard and the other standard we're not going to abide by. We have lost our foundation for principles. And that was the whole primary purpose for me putting out the message that I put out to my viewers this morning pertaining to principles. And yes, the latter part is still based around principles pertaining to the Patreon movie. I don't necessarily agree with what the actor said as far as that if you're a parent, you don't have the privilege of principles. I think if you're a parent, you have more of a responsibility towards having principles. Principles not only with your own life, but principles with your children's lives. Now, granted, he was talking about going to war and actually fighting, and if he died in combat, there would be nobody to take care of his children. Well, that's the reason why the United States military does not promote parenthood ordinarily on the combat lines. A matter of fact, during World War II, if you did get drafted, and if you was a parent, ordinarily, your name got pushed off to the side. Or if you was the only remaining sibling in that family, and there was not another brother or another sister, a lot of times the United States military would push your name off to the side. We do got standards here in America, and we do got principles, though we haven't been living up to those principles here lately. But I believe that we have a chief and commander that is trying to bring those back to the forefront pertaining to Donald Trump, Donald J. Trump, our chief and commander. And because of it, he is being ridiculed. He is being basically, his soul is being executed before the American people. Similar to what has happened to this gentleman right here, this actor Jesse, and similar to what has happened in my life towards trying to do the right thing for the right principles, for the right reasons, in the eyes of the Almighty. Not the eyes of the hungry, not the eyes of the greedy, not the eyes of the rich, not the eyes of the famous, not the eyes of the unthankful, but the eyes of God. And whenever we no longer have that as a compass of a northern star, then is whenever we get out of line. And then is whenever we start going through rough waters like we've been going through now for the past 30 years. And if we continue on this chart that we're on, it's only going to get worse and worse and worse. I hope this individual, Jesse, accepts my apology for me being part of this shenanigan that has went on with the open media. And I pray for his healing. I pray for his family. I pray for his endeavors. And I pray that whoever did in fact commit this crime against this individual will be found, executed to the fullest extent of the law, and that they will learn their lesson towards trying to do this again to anybody else. Once more, we are a nation of laws. And whenever the laws of this nation have been tainted by no longer having a standard or a principle to go by, then is whenever you have a free-for-all. Anarchy. And as far as I am concerned, that's exactly what has occurred here in Weakley County. It's been a free-for-all. And to be quite honest with you, I don't see it nowhere in the Bible where it says that Dennis James Juby Jackson has to be anybody's floor mat or anybody's whipping post simply because he claims that he has been ordained by God Almighty and that he believes that he has a purpose to fulfill for his Heavenly Father. I don't see it nowhere in our Constitution that gives either Donald Ridgway or anybody else in this neighborhood, including the judicial system, the right to violate my rights as me being a born-again believing Christian. And as far as I am concerned, may God have mercy on these people and upon their souls, because they think that they have gotten away with this. They believe that there's not going to be some sort of vindication or any type of a reckoning there will be a reckoning. If not in this lifetime, in the lifetime to come. And you can explain that to all the locals around here that I know that know me, including Tommy Moore and including David Moore in Martin, Tennessee, that was ahead of his police department during the time in 2005 that they tried to make me out to be a homegrown terrorist. Have a good day. Shalom. Lord God, what a situation.